That's me on the left, Eve, and that's my favourite cafe in Paris.
Vous avez quoi comme thé?
Alors, le thé.
Today I'm using it as my office to prepare for my rendezvous with 3 artists who are showing us this beautiful city through their eyes. Alex Kapranos from the band Franz Ferdinand.
So I'm meeting him in a real foodie area.
British painter Anthony Paliza.
He's going to show me around the Musée d'Orsay.
And the actress Charlotte Rampling. First stop, Montmartre, in the north of Paris.
This is a really amazing street. I always come back here when I come to Paris because we have so many incredible food shops.
Rock god with British band Franz Ferdinand, Alex is also a food writer. He really loves his grub.
What I love is you have all these shops that are specific, like they sell one thing, which seems like a really old-fashioned way of shopping and kind of like the opposite of going to a supermarket.
Why do you think people love Paris and think of food when they think about Paris so much?
Oh, the food's so good here. And it's so regional as well, and that's one thing I love. You know, you'll go to one particular part of the country to get one particular thing, and this one cheese has to come from one specific town, and it can't come from anywhere else.
They're like swans. Oh, no, this isn't something that you really want to do on television.
You've got to do it in one, haven't you? Good job, I've got a big gob.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. See you next time. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Can I try the Goya, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. It's from 1968.
How many have you got?
Must have about 25 guitars,
Oh, really?
something like that now. But there's one guitar that I play all the time, and that's the one that I first got that I always played with the band. That's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, so these were made in Italy. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for letting me try it. Cheers.
Duvet. Okay, so I wanted to show you something from quite a few years ago now.
Yeah.
This is your most famous song, would you say?
It was the first song that brought a lot of people's attention to the band. It was our second single in 2004, Take Me Out. And I think, yeah, that's the way most people discovered the band.
Do you remember the first time you performed that in Paris? What was the reception like?
Oh, yeah, the first time I played in Paris was at La Boule Noire, which is a tiny little venue below La Cigale. There's maybe about 30 people there. But then I remember coming back maybe about 2 or 3 months later, after the song had been released, and playing in La Cigale, the bigger room upstairs, and that's one of my favourite ever shows in Paris.
But this time, though, you're not here with the music, you're here with your book. It's been translated into French, very different covers, and you're basically talking about eating on tour with Franz Ferdinand.
Yes.
Tell us about what you say about Paris.
I actually talk about this area in the book. One thing I really loved was the cafes and the way you can sit and watch people. You know, if you're a songwriter, you tend to be an observer. You tend to watch people and watch people go by. And Paris is one of the greatest cities in the world for people watching. Mainly because people do it to each other all the time here. It seems to be a way of life, just checking people out. You know, you sit on the metro here and everybody's looking you up and down and checking out what you're wearing. Bonjour.
Maybe we'll just get a sort of mixture of things.
Yep. nice.
Here we have a salad of Brussels sprouts, pecorino cheese and walnuts. And this is grated carrots with fresh coriander and fresh pistachio.
Oh, lovely.
Okay, lovely.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
La terrine campagne, la maison.
Oh, that looks fantastic, isn't it?
So do you know croque madame and croque monsieur? It's basically kind of a very nice cheese sandwich with ham, if it's a monsieur, and with a madame, it has like an egg on it.
Ah, yeah. It's like the traditional fast food in France, isn't it?
But really good. And you're going on tour again later this year because you've formed a super band with the Sparks. Tell us a bit about that.
I first met Ron and Russell Mail from Sparks about 10 years ago, and we'd talked vaguely about playing some music together. Then I bumped into them in San Francisco a couple of years ago, and we started sending songs to each other, and thought, oh, this sounds like an album. Let's make an album of songs, and we'll be touring that this summer. They're a great example because they've made 22 albums now, and they've done it with a great sense of individuality and style, and you know, they've kept their own identity and kept doing something that's original as well over the years.
And this will be Franz Ferdinand's 5th album.
Yeah, well, it's going to be the 5th album that we've made, yes.
You're going on to make 22, is that your aim?
I don't know. It's a lot of albums, that, isn't it? Yeah.
So clever, cultured, super nice, Alex K gives musicians a good name. Now let's go and walk off all that eating with a very British portrait artist, Anthony Paliza.
Hello.
How are you?
Great, how are you doing?
Admiring this incredible view.
What a great place to meet.
I know, isn't that fantastic? It's kind of like a privileged place of your own. I love it.
You can see everything. That's the Sacré-Cœur.
My godfather used to say it makes you believe in God. And then the Tuileries right there, and the Louvre.
Is this why artists come to Paris, do you think?
Well, I'm sure that would be one of the reasons, but I think anyone would be drawn to it. It's so gorgeous. I love living here.
The museum also sort of bridges the gap between other museums in Paris, like the Louvre, the Modern Art Museum, the Pompidou.
Definitely, definitely. It's one of the, and I think the most agreeable transition was between the classical world and the modern world. You know, I mean, it covers a brilliant part of French artistic history, anyway, to the late 19th century.
And there's 18,000 or so works here. But really, the building is just as impressive, isn't it?
The building is fantastic, particularly the older part of the building, which is the remains of a train station, as you know. It's much more manageable than the thousands of people trying to get in the Louvre every day.
And I think a bit more special, maybe, the building.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
But the museum's most famous collection is the Impressionists. It's got the biggest collection of Impressionist art in the world, I think.
I think so. And this is a very simple painting, but it's so evocative.
Manet.
Yeah. And this is very, very simple, quick sketch, but it's very strong. I think it has an effect on people. That fantastic painting there, look. I've always been in huge admiration of just the technical skill of that. And it's by someone called Caillebotte, who was a friend of all the Impressionists, and himself very well off. He had tons of money, and he would actually help them all night. But in a funny way, because he was rich, they all said, well, you know, he just does it. You know,
Can't be good.
He's a Sunday painter. But he's, I think, one of the most modern Impressionists. He really is looking to the future.
This room is actually the reason you brought us to the Musée d'Orsay.
Yeah.
What is it?
It was originally the salle des fêtes where big parties were held. It's a sort of glorious memories of times gone by, anyway, of great luxury. So this is where it all happens.
What an incredible room.
It's great, isn't it?
This is your studio.
It's my studio / drawing room, yeah. And I've been living here for 25 years now.
What was it that brought you to Paris in the first place? How many years? 45 years ago?
Yes, well, I was 21. I just left university. And it's partly, I mean, sort of one silly answer to that, it's girls. I got on better with French ladies than English ladies. But more seriously, it's slightly what we saw at Orsay. It's that incredible beauty of the place.
You didn't end up with a French girl, though, did you?
No, I ended up with a Cherokee Georgia girl. And I'm every day grateful for that.
And you've painted sort of the who's who of the Paris scene over the years, like people like who?
I just ask people whose faces I think are cool, like Kristen Scott Thomas got an incredible face. And there's a little one there of Helen Bonham Carter, who looks incredibly Spanish in that one, which I like. And Charlotte Rampling, whom I'm expecting any minute now. We met more years than gallantry allows me to say. Yes, we met. And she was my best man at my wedding. Charlotte, this is Eve.
Hello.
Charlotte.
Nice to meet you.
Might be able to cut that one, I think, a little bit. I think I painted you 4 times, I'm not sure.
Well, the first time was when you were in Rue Tiquetonne, and that was probably about 25 years ago.
And that's the one with the 2 faces. And Charlotte's parents came to a show I had in London, and the father was this incredibly sort of handsome, rather sort of intimidating man. Looked at me and said, "Well, I like the one on the right much more than the one on the left, don't you?"
I think the one on the left's far too sad, he said.
That's right.
I don't like seeing my daughter so sad. But they all thought I was either too fierce or too sad or the skin colour wasn't quite sort of... They hadn't, you know, it's difficult sometimes to grasp what actually a portrait is. It is not supposed to be absolutely like you. It's supposed to be a representation, the artist representation of you. So, you know, you see it and you think, oh, well, I don't really like the way that looks. That's really not very important.
I tell people I don't know well if I paint them, please don't be scared if you hate it the first 10 minutes or whatever. You have to let it sink in, because it really is not like a photograph. And because so many of us are used to, particularly actors and actresses, used to being photographed, it slightly warps the idea one has of how one looks oneself.
Your mother was a painter, Charlotte.
Yeah, she was, yeah. Not an official one. She never sort of thought she was any good, but she was actually very good.
And Anthony tells me that you do secret painting.
And I do secret sort of rubbing of odd things that sort of, perhaps one wouldn't call painting in this sense, but well, artwork.
But we never get a chance to see that.
No.
It's sort of very private.
Yeah, I think it should remain private.
You've just won Best Actress in Berlin. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Have you seen the film 45 years?
Not yet, no. But I was so pleased, it's so deserved.
Well, nobody's seen the films. It's rather nice because you can glow in the light of having won a prize of a film that only the selected few at Berlin saw, right? Then after, so people can't criticise, or people can't, what they've said about it already is good, obviously. But
you've been in dozens of films over the years. Is there one that you're particularly fond of?
In the recent work, I think Under the Sand is qualified. You know, it's just so good. I don't know if it's... There are other good ones, but that one particularly, I think Charlotte's work in it was incredible, because there was practically nothing. It was all sort of on the... Since she was living out a line in the film, it's incredible how the face just suggested it and confused us. It was a brilliant performance.
So we can see it. Was that your first Francois Ozon film?
Yes,
with him?
it was, yeah.
Was that quite a sort of defining film for you in your career?
Yes, it was, yeah.
And I told her not to do it. Do you remember?
I don't know why you told me. Oh, yes, you did.
You know, because you said you didn't know the ending.
Oh, because it was another film I was doing for nothing, an auteur film that was a sort of tiny budget, and I was going off I don't know where
French
with a group
director
of
who
people.
didn't have the end.
French director who at that time was not necessarily considered. But I disobeyed my master Anthony.
Thank God for that.
You've both been here for like a long time in Paris, probably more than you were in the UK. You lived in the UK for?
Almost, yeah, actually.
So do you feel
half and half, yeah.
more Parisian now than you do British?
When I go back to England, for some weird reason, I feel that this is the land of my fathers kind of thing.
You don't change actually at all. I mean, you get things wear off on you, which is great, but you can't change what you are.
No, that's for sure.
Very profound.
No, that's for sure.
And on that profound note, I'm off. I've had an interesting few hours with these two. I hope you've had as lovely a day as I have. I'll leave you here on the banks of the River Seine. It's time to say au revoir until next time.